I decided to make it with an all-Norwegian cast and an all-Norwegian crew and shoot it in Norway. So it has I want to feel it has a Norwegian soul. And in a way, I was there sort of pretty much on my own, trying to channel what they had to say.
Welcome everyone. We're going to do an exercise called If I Were Prime Minister. Vilja, can you start?
Yeah, sure. Okay, where I come from? Everyone is welcome, regardless of nationality. And if I was Prime Minister, that's what I'd stand for.
It's really the story, not of the attacks themselves, it's the story of how Norway fought for her democracy. And I think the real issue today is across the West, the rise of this hard right-wing populist politics that's driving everything before it. We're in a skid, we're feeling unmoored, and the more I thought about that, the more it seemed that what happened in Norway was a sort of inciting moment, and that Brevik, in his with his right-wing manifesto, hard neo-Nazi manifesto, was really opening the door to something that you see now, all over the West.
Did you feel any sort of responsibility or worry about the fact that maybe people will go see this movie that look at what he says, because he does have a platform in obviously the courtroom scenes in different ways of stating what he believes and what he does, and there's a lot of nutcases out there.
I did think about that, but I think we've got to be honest about where we are. I remember reading his testimony, before I started the film. And if you look at the arguments that he deploys in court, that's standard populist right-wing rhetoric now, whether in Europe or the USA. Not his methods, but his worldview, the way he sees the world. And millions of people agree with him. It's pointless to pretend that these arguments aren't there. They're not in the margins, they're in the mainstream now. And so it's a little bit like, closing the barn door when the building's on fire. You have to put the fire out. You've got to confront these arguments. And I think there's evidence, whether you look at what happened after Parkland in your country, or what happened after Brexit in the UK, or what's happening in Germany with young people, or Italy, or elsewhere. Young people, I think, are being called on to fight for their own democracy, to decide what sort of world they want to live in.
Well, some have called you a political filmmaker. I wouldn't say that necessarily.
I don't know. I kind of go, what's a political filmmaker?
Right.
A political filmmaker, I think what people mean is that's a propagandist. That's someone who makes a film and selects what they makes a film about, and selects the sort of material in the film to suit a preconceived political point of view. That's not what I do. What I do try to do, and I have made a number of films, United 93 being one, and Bloody Sunday obviously another, is try and find a moment of tremendous importance and look at it very closely, and look at it fairly and truthfully, and try and listen to what it's got to say and the meanings inside it, in the belief that you're looking at the DNA of the times.
I was curious about United 93, for which you received an Academy Award nomination for Best Director, and that was such an intense movie, and it was 5 years after the events itself. Was that enough time?
The people who are the only people really to make that decision are the people caught up in those events, and they strongly supported that film, as the families of 22 July have strongly supported this film. These events are both public and private, and the public and the private element is in tension with each other. These acts, whether it's 9/11 or 22 July, are meant to terrorise us. They're meant to be public. They're meant to be theatrical. They're meant to compel our attention and shock us, and erode our trust in each other and our institutions. But for the people unlucky enough to be caught up directly, they are moments of unimaginable private tragedy. Those of us not involved have to move on with our lives. We tell our kids, listen, you can't surrender to terror, you have to go about your lives. We want to believe that everything is normal. But if you're caught up in them, you can never move on. And over time, you become very troubled by that, because you've been driven against, not out of your choice, towards spending the rest of your life thinking about the meaning of this. In that space, in that tension between the public and the private, which has been entirely 180-degree reversed over time,
Right.
That's the space where books get written, documentaries get made, plays get made and films get made, because it's, in a democracy, we have to process and mediate between the public and private meetings to make sense of them for ourselves.